Welcome to this channel where Keanu Reeves' kindness speaks louder than fame. Here we share quiet human stories about respect, humility, and emotional strength. In this video, you will witness a powerful moment where listening changes everything. Stay till the end because the lesson is simple, deep, and unforgettable.
Inspiration comes quietly for me, not in loud speeches, not in perfect moments, but in the kind of calm presence that makes other people feel safe. Keanu Reeves inspires me because he is often described as someone who chooses respect over attention. He seems to carry humility like it is normal, not like it is a performance. When I think about what the world needs more of, I think of listening that does not rush, kindness that does not ask for credit, and strength that does not need to prove itself. That is why this story begins with a small moment, because small moments are where real character shows. The air inside the room felt a little softer than it should have, like the building itself was holding its breath. Light from a nearby lamp rested gently on the wall, warm, steady, almost too calm for how late it was. A faint hum from the heater came and went, not loud enough to be noticed unless you were already listening for something. Sandra sat still, her hands together, her eyes moving as if they were reading a thought that had no words yet. Something in her chest felt tight, not pain, not fear, but a quiet pressure that did not explain itself. She tried to name it and could not, and that made her feel even more alone. Keanu was there, not close enough to crowd her, not far enough to feel distant. He stood by the edge of the room for a moment, then sat down in a simple chair that did not look like it belonged to someone famous. His shoulders were relaxed, but his attention was fully awake. He noticed the small things, the way her breathing changed, the way she looked toward the window and then away, the way her mouth opened slightly like she wanted to speak and then chose not to. He did not ask a question yet. He did not fill the space with a friendly comment. He simply stayed still, like he had learned that silence can be a form of care. Sandra had always been good at keeping things moving. She could be warm, funny, sharp, and quick, and she could turn a heavy day into something lighter just by choosing the right words. Today her words felt like they were hidden behind a door that would not open. It was not sadness in a dramatic way. It was something quieter, like a tiredness that lived deeper than sleep. She looked at Keanu and wondered if he could see it. She also wondered if she wanted him to see it, because being seen can feel like relief, but it can also feel like risk. The strong part of her wanted to speak first, to make it simple, to say something casual to keep control of her own story. Another part of her wanted to stop performing even for a second, to let the truth come out the way it actually felt, messy and slow. She swallowed, and the sound of it felt louder than it should have. Keanu noticed, and he did not react with pity. He did not lean forward like he was trying to fix her. He just looked at her with the same gentle attention a person gives to something that matters. This was the first twist of the night, not a big one, but a subtle shift that changed everything. Sandra expected him to speak. Most people spoke. Most people rushed to fill any quiet with advice or jokes or comfort that arrived too early. Keanu did not. He waited, and the waiting felt like an invitation. It also felt like a test, because silence can feel like a mirror, and Sandra was not sure she was ready to look at what she might see. Outside, a car passed, its lights sliding briefly across the curtains like a slow wave. Sandra watched the light move, and for a moment she felt like her thoughts were moving the same way, passing through her but not landing anywhere. She took a breath, then another, and she finally spoke, but the first words were not the real ones. "I should be fine," she said softly. Keanu nodded once, not agreeing, not disagreeing, just acknowledging that she had spoken. His eyes stayed calm. He did not say, "You are fine." He did not say, "You are not fine." He did not even say, "Tell me what is wrong." He simply let her sentence sit in the air, giving it space to become something else if it needed to. Sandra felt that. She felt the room not pushing her, and that made something inside her loosen just enough for honesty to try again. She looked down at her hands, the way her fingers pressed together, and she realized she was holding herself like she was trying not to spill something. Her voice came again, still quiet. "It has been a long week," she said. Keanu took a slow breath, and his shoulders lifted slightly and fell. It was not a dramatic gesture, but it made her feel like he was with her in the simplest way. He still did not speak. He stayed present, and his silence was not empty. It was full of attention, full of patience, full of respect that did not demand anything from her. Sandra felt a strange mix of comfort and fear. Comfort because she could finally stop trying to sound okay. Fear because if she stopped, she might not know where to begin. The truth was not one clear problem, it was many small pressures stacked together until they became one heavy thing. She had been carrying it without even noticing the weight. Now that she was sitting in this warm light with someone who would not interrupt her, the weight started to show itself. She tried to explain it in a way that would not sound dramatic. She spoke about expectations. She spoke about the way people watch you and decide what you are allowed to feel. She spoke about how kindness can sometimes become a job if you always have to be the pleasant one. She spoke about how even good moments can feel tiring when you never get to be just a person. As she spoke, she expected Keanu to jump in with reassurance, to say the perfect line, to wrap her words in something safe and neat. He did not. He kept listening. And that was when the suspense truly started, because listening can be more intense than speaking. When someone is fully listening, you cannot hide behind quick jokes. You cannot escape into distraction. You have to stay with your own truth. Sandra felt that pressure and she almost stopped. Her throat tightened and she laughed once, a small laugh that did not match her eyes. "I sound ungrateful," she said. Keanu finally spoke, but only a few words, gentle and clear. "You do not," he said. Then he stopped again. Those two words landed like a hand placed softly on the table, steady, not demanding. Sandra blinked and she felt her eyes get warmer. She looked away fast, like she did not want to make the moment bigger than it was. She wanted to stay composed. She wanted to stay in control. But her body had started to relax, and when the body relaxes, emotions sometimes rise like water. Keanu did not stare. He did not ask if she was about to cry. He did not do anything that would make her feel exposed. He simply stayed the way a good friend stays, the way a safe person stays. He made room for her feelings without making them the center of attention. And that quiet respect made her trust him more, even though she did not yet understand why he was being so careful. Sandra looked at him again, and a thought came to her that surprised her. She realized that Keanu was choosing something on purpose. He was not quiet because he had nothing to say. He was quiet because he believed her words deserved to exist without interruption. It was a rare kind of respect, and it made her feel both grateful and uneasy because it asked her to be honest in return. She took another breath, slower now, and she said something that she had not planned to say. "Sometimes I feel like I am always supposed to be brave," she said. As soon as she said it, the room felt different. Not heavier, but more real. She waited for Keanu to respond, but he did not respond the way people usually do. He did not praise her for being brave. He did not turn it into a motivational speech. He did not say, "You are strong, you can handle anything." He just listened, and his face showed quiet understanding, not admiration, not judgment. It was as if he was telling her without words, "You are allowed to feel what you feel." For a moment, Sandra wondered if his silence meant he did not know what to say. That thought brought a small sting, and she felt herself starting to pull back. She had been vulnerable for only a few minutes, and already her mind was trying to protect her by calling it a mistake. She looked toward the window again, and her shoulders tensed. Keanu noticed the shift. He did not speak, but he changed one small thing. He turned his chair a little more toward her so his body fully faced her. It was a simple movement, but it carried a message. "I am here," it said. "I am not going anywhere. I am listening, not waiting for my turn to talk." Sandra saw the movement, and the sting softened. She realized that his silence was not absence. It was presence. And she felt the edge of another truth approaching, something she had not shared with anyone, not because it was shameful, but because it was tender and complicated. She did not know if she was ready to say it, but the fact that she was considering it meant something was changing. She lowered her voice again. "There is something else," she said, and then she stopped. The words hung there, unfinished, like a door left slightly open. Keanu did not rush to push it wider. He simply waited, calm, respectful, steady. And in that waiting, the night quietly turned toward a mystery that was not about gossip or drama, but about the private weight people carry behind their smiles. The room did not change, but Sandra felt like everything inside her had shifted by a few inches. Her last sentence still hovered in the air, soft and unfinished. "There is something else." It sounded simple, but it carried the weight of a door that had stayed closed for too long. She listened to the heater hum again, and she realized how clearly she could hear it now, as if her senses had become sharper because she was finally paying attention to herself. Keanu stayed quiet. His silence did not feel like pressure. It felt like permission. He looked at her the way someone looks at a friend who is trying to find the courage to be honest without being pushed. He kept his hands relaxed on his knees, not fidgeting, not reaching for anything, not performing comfort. He was present in a way that made the moment feel safe, but also serious, because it told her that what she said next would be received with care. Sandra took a breath that felt a little shaky. She did not like that it was shaky. She had always wanted her voice to sound steady, even when she was tired. But tonight, the steadiness was not there, and she realized that was the point. She did not want to keep hiding behind the version of herself that always handled everything. She started speaking again, slowly. "I keep thinking I should not feel this way," she said. She expected Keanu to answer, to correct her, to say you are allowed to feel anything. He did not. He listened, and that made her continue because the silence was like a wide road in front of her, clear and open. Sandra told him about the kind of tiredness that comes after giving people your best self for too long. She described it in simple words, but her tone held the deeper meaning. It was not only physical fatigue. It was emotional fatigue, the feeling of always being careful, always being kind, always being ready to make someone else comfortable. She explained how strange it felt to carry gratitude and exhaustion at the same time. She said she sometimes felt guilty for wanting quiet, because so many people around her worked even harder with less support. Keanu nodded once, slowly, as if he understood that she was not asking for a solution. She was asking for space, and he gave her that space by staying quiet, by letting her words take their time. Sandra looked down and spoke more softly. "There is a part of me that is scared," she said. That sentence made her stomach tighten. She did not want to sound afraid. She did not want to admit fear. She wanted to keep the story clean. Brave person feels tired but then feels fine. But the truth was not clean. The truth had edges. Keanu did not look surprised. He did not react like her fear was unusual. His face stayed calm, almost gentle. He did not ask, "What are you scared of?" He did not push. He waited, and Sandra felt herself stepping closer to the thing she had been avoiding. "I am scared that one day I will not know who I am without the job," she said. The words came out quietly, but they felt loud inside her. She had not said that to anyone, not like this. She felt a flush of embarrassment, then frustration at herself for feeling embarrassed. She was human, she reminded herself. She was allowed to have fears that did not fit into a neat public image. Keanu took a slow breath. He looked at her, then looked down for a moment, as if he was making sure his next move would not disturb the fragile honesty forming between them. Then he did something small, a subtle twist that deepened the suspense in a new way. He did not speak yet. Instead, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out something folded, not to show off, not to present a dramatic reveal, but as if it was simply part of his ordinary day. He placed it on the table between them, gently, like he did not want the paper to make a sound. The object was not flashy. It looked like a simple note on plain paper. Sandra froze for a moment. The note sat there like a quiet question. She did not touch it. She did not ask what it was. She just stared at it as if it had appeared from the wrong place at the wrong time. Her mind moved fast, searching for context, searching for meaning. Keanu still did not speak, and his silence turned the paper into a mystery. The heater hum faded for a second, then returned. The light on the wall felt warmer, almost too warm. Sandra felt a slight tightening in her chest again, not the same as before, sharper now, because the note made the moment feel connected to something larger. She wondered if this was a message from someone. She wondered if it was something about her. She wondered why Keanu had it. Keanu finally spoke, his voice low and careful. "You do not have to read it," he said. He said it like a promise, not like a challenge. Sandra looked up at him, confused. "Then why is it here?" she asked. Keanu held her gaze, steady and respectful. "Because I think you might recognize it," he said. And then he stopped again. That pause pulled Sandra forward without pushing her. She reached for the note slowly, as if it might change the air if she touched it. Her fingers closed around the folded paper. She felt how thin it was. It did not feel important in a physical way. It felt important in a human way. She unfolded it once, then again. The writing was simple, not long, not dramatic, and yet Sandra felt her throat tighten because the words sounded familiar, like a voice she had heard long ago, a voice she had forgotten was still inside her. "It is okay to be quiet. It is okay to not know the next line. You do not owe anyone your strength all the time." Sandra stared at the note. She read it again. She felt her eyes burn. She forced herself to blink normally. She did not want to cry, but her body did not care what she wanted. "Where did you get this?" she asked. Keanu watched her carefully, like he was listening to her even while she was reading. "You wrote it," he said. Sandra looked at him, shocked. "That is not possible," she whispered. Keanu did not correct her right away. He let her reaction exist. He knew the memory was moving through her, and he did not want to rush it. Sandra shook her head, still staring at the note. "I did not write this," she said, her voice sharper now, more defensive. Keanu nodded once, calm. "You did," he said, "not recently." Sandra felt her heart beat faster. The note suddenly became a doorway, and beyond it was a time she had not visited in years. She tried to place it. She tried to remember. Her mind flickered with images: a small room, a pen, a night where she could not sleep, a moment where she might have written something to comfort herself. But it felt distant, like a dream that disappears when you wake up. She looked at Keanu again, and her suspicion rose, not anger but confusion. "Why do you have it?" she asked. "Why are you showing me now?" Keanu lowered his eyes for a moment, then looked back up. "Because I found it in a place that should not have had it," he said. "And because I think you have been carrying the same fear again, just in a different shape." Sandra felt a chill in her arms, not from cold, but from the strange feeling of being understood too clearly. "What place?" she asked. Keanu hesitated. It was the first time he seemed unsure, not about what to say, but about whether he should say it. His respect showed in the hesitation. He was not trying to control the story, he was trying to protect her. Sandra waited. The silence returned, but now it had a different tension. It was not only space, it was suspense. Keanu finally spoke. "It was in an envelope," he said, "with your name on it, and it was left somewhere public." Sandra felt her breath catch. Public meant strangers. Public meant anyone could have found it. Public meant the private note she may have written to herself could have been read by someone who did not care about her feelings. Her eyes dropped to the note again. The paper trembled slightly in her hands. "When?" she asked. Keanu answered with a calm honesty. "Today," he said. Sandra felt a wave of emotion, embarrassment first, then fear, then something else that surprised her: gratitude. Gratitude because the note had reached Keanu, not someone cruel. Gratitude because he had brought it to her in this gentle way instead of turning it into a story. Gratitude because he had been listening to her long before he placed the note on the table. But gratitude did not erase the question that formed in her mind. "Who left it?" she asked. Keanu did not answer immediately. His jaw tightened slightly, not with anger but with thought. He looked at the note, then at Sandra, and he chose his words carefully. "I do not know," he said, "not yet." That sentence created a new kind of suspense. The note was not only a memory, it was a mystery. Someone had taken something private and placed it in public. It could have been careless, it could have been intentional, it could have been kindness, or it could have been something else. Sandra swallowed. She felt the urge to stand up, to do something, to take control, to call someone, to make it stop. And in that moment, she realized the note was doing something strange. It was bringing her face to face with her own words, and it was also forcing her to trust someone else with a situation she could not fully understand. She looked at Keanu, and her voice softened again. "What do you think it means?" she asked. Keanu answered gently, still not giving advice, still not claiming certainty. "I think it means someone noticed you," he said. "Someone noticed the quiet parts, and I think it also means your own words came back to you because you needed them." Sandra felt tears finally gather. She blinked again, slower this time. She did not hide it now, she did not apologize. And then, just as the moment began to feel like it might settle, Keanu added one more sentence, a quiet twist that raised the stakes without turning the story dark. "There was another note," he said, "not written by you." Sandra froze. She gripped the paper tighter. "What did it say?" she asked. Keanu paused, and the room felt like it was holding its breath again, just like it had at the start, but now the tension had a shape. "It said," he began, and then stopped. Sandra leaned forward, her eyes fixed on him, her heart beating faster because whatever came next would change the meaning of everything. The silence after Keanu stopped speaking felt heavier than before. It was no longer gentle. It carried a careful tension, like a glass held too close to the edge of a table. Sandra leaned forward slightly, her body moving before her thoughts could slow it down. Her mind filled the gap with possibilities, none of them clear, all of them unsettling in their own quiet way. "What did it say?" she asked again, softer this time. Keanu did not answer right away. He was not trying to build drama. He was measuring something else, the balance between honesty and care. His eyes stayed on Sandra, watching the way her fingers tightened around the note she had written long ago. He could see how much this moment mattered, not because of mystery, but because of what it was touching inside her. He finally spoke. It did not say much, he said, but what it said matters. Sandra felt a small rush of frustration, not toward him, but toward the waiting itself. She had opened a door she did not know how to close, and now she was standing in the space between knowing and not knowing. She took a breath and tried to steady herself. "Please," she said, "just tell me." Keanu nodded once. He reached into his pocket again, slower this time, as if every movement needed permission. He placed a second piece of paper beside the first one. This note was different. The paper was slightly thicker. The handwriting was unfamiliar, neat but not careful in the same way hers had been. Sandra felt her stomach tighten as she looked at it. She did not touch it immediately. "Where did you find this one?" she asked. "Same place," Keanu said, "same envelope." That answer made the moment stretch even further. Sandra picked up the second note. Her hands felt warm. Her pulse felt louder in her ears than it should have. She unfolded the paper and read. The words were simple. "She listens more than she knows. Please protect her quiet." Sandra stared at the sentence. She read it again. Her brow tightened, not in anger, but in confusion. Protect her quiet. The phrase felt intimate in a way that unsettled her. It suggested that someone had been watching, not in a threatening way, but in a way that still crossed a line. Someone had noticed something about her that she rarely named out loud. She looked up at Keanu. "This feels strange," she said. Keanu nodded. "It does," he said, "and you are right to feel that way." That response grounded her more than anything else could have. He was not dismissing her discomfort. He was not telling her it was harmless. He was acknowledging that even kindness can feel wrong if it removes choice. Sandra set the second note down carefully. "Who would do this?" she asked. Keanu shook his head slowly. "I do not know," he said, "but I know what I chose not to do." That sentence caught her attention. "What do you mean?" she asked. Keanu took a breath. He looked toward the window briefly, then back at her. "I could have asked around," he said. "I could have tried to find out who touched something private and left it where anyone could see. I could have turned it into a problem to solve." He paused. "But I did not." Sandra studied his face. She sensed a choice behind his words, a deliberate one. "Why not?" she asked. Keanu answered simply. "Because the notes were not about me," he said, "and they were not meant to become noise." That landed softly but firmly. Sandra felt the meaning settle. He had chosen not to speak, not to investigate loudly, not to react in a way that would take control away from her. He had chosen listening again, even in action, not just in conversation. But something inside Sandra resisted that calm explanation. "What if someone crossed a boundary?" she said. "What if this was not kind?" Keanu nodded again. "Then your discomfort matters more than anyone's intent," he said. That was the twist she did not expect. He was not defending the mystery. He was defending her right to define how it felt. That made her chest loosen slightly. Still, her mind returned to the note. "Protect her quiet." Those words stayed with her. She had spent years protecting other people's comfort. She rarely thought about her own quiet as something fragile or valuable. Seeing it written by a stranger made it feel exposed, like a light had been turned on in a room she kept private. She leaned back and closed her eyes for a moment. Images moved through her mind, moments where she had stayed silent to keep peace, moments where she had listened more than she spoke, moments where she had absorbed other people's emotions until her own voice felt faint. She had never framed that as something to protect. Keanu watched her carefully. He did not interrupt her thinking. He had learned that silence can be a place where people meet themselves. After a long moment, Sandra opened her eyes. "I do not like that someone saw me that way without asking," she said, "but I also cannot deny that the words feel true." Keanu responded quietly. "Both can exist," he said. That sentence held more wisdom than advice ever could. It allowed her feelings to stay complex without needing to choose one side. Sandra looked at the two notes on the table, one written by her past self, one written by someone unknown. Together they formed a strange mirror. She felt a subtle shift inside her, not resolution, but awareness. "Why did you bring this to me now?" she asked. Keanu considered the question carefully. "Because tonight," he said, "you were already listening to something inside yourself. I did not want to speak over that." That honesty moved her deeply. She realized that he had been holding these notes back until the moment felt right, until she was ready to meet them without being overwhelmed. It was not control, it was patience. Sandra felt emotion rise again, but this time it was mixed with gratitude and respect. She was not being fixed, she was being trusted. There was still one question that had not left her mind. "What happens next?" she asked. Keanu answered without certainty. "We decide together," he said. "Or you decide, nothing needs to happen tonight." That offer shifted the power back where it belonged. Sandra felt the tension ease from her shoulders. She realized how rare it was for someone to give space instead of direction. She picked up her old note again and folded it slowly. "I think I forgot this part of myself," she said, "the part that wrote this." Keanu listened. "And I think someone else noticed it before I did," she added. Keanu nodded. "Sometimes other people see our quiet before we value it," he said. "That does not give them ownership." Those words settled the lingering unease. Sandra felt steadier now. The mystery was still there, but it no longer felt threatening. It felt like an invitation to reflect rather than react. She stood up and walked toward the window. Outside, the street was calm. Lights reflected on the pavement. Life continued, ordinary and unbothered. She realized that the notes did not demand action. They asked for awareness. She turned back to Keanu. "Thank you for not speaking too soon," she said. Keanu met her eyes. "Thank you for trusting the silence," he replied. They shared a quiet understanding then, but the story was not finished. The notes had opened something deeper than a mystery. They had revealed a pattern, a way Sandra had been living without fully seeing it. As the night moved forward, Sandra felt a question forming, not about who wrote the second note, but about how many times she had ignored her own quiet to meet expectations. And she sensed that the next part of this journey would not be about finding a person, but about facing a truth she had avoided for years. The room felt calmer after the conversation slowed, but inside Sandra something restless had begun to move. It was not panic, it was awareness, the kind that does not shout but does not let you go back to sleep either. She stood near the window, watching the quiet street, and she noticed how her reflection mixed with the outside lights. It felt like seeing two versions of herself at once, the one who shows up every day and the one who stays quiet in the background. Keanu remained seated, giving her space without withdrawing. He could sense that this was not a moment to fill. The suspense now lived inside her, not between them. She was beginning to connect small truths that had never been placed side by side before. "I think I have been misunderstanding myself," Sandra said slowly. Keanu listened. She turned from the window and walked back to the table. She looked at the notes again, not with fear now, but with a careful curiosity. The note she had written years ago felt like a message from someone who knew her better than she remembered. The second note felt like a reflection she had not asked for, but could not ignore. "I always thought listening was something I did for other people," she said. "I did not realize how rarely I listened to myself." That realization landed quietly, but it carried weight. Keanu felt it too. He did not rush to respond. He knew that naming a truth too quickly can make it disappear. Sandra sat down again, her posture different now. Less guarded, less tense. "I keep thinking about the words protect her quiet," she said. "It bothers me. Not because it is wrong, but because I never protected it myself." This was the emotional turn. The mystery of the notes was slowly giving way to something deeper. The real conflict was not about who wrote them. It was about why she had needed them in the first place. Keanu spoke gently. "What does your quiet need?" he asked. The question surprised her. It was not what she expected. She had been waiting for advice, for reassurance, for explanation. Instead, she was being asked to listen inward. Sandra stayed silent for a long moment. She closed her eyes, not in frustration, but in concentration. She let herself feel the question instead of answering it right away. The room seemed to soften again like it had earlier, but now the calm felt earned. "Space," she said finally, "and honesty." Keanu nodded. "From who?" he asked. Sandra smiled faintly, not amused but aware. "From myself," she said. That answer shifted something between them. The story was no longer about an outside mystery. It was about an inner pattern. The suspense deepened not through danger but through recognition. Sandra leaned back and let her shoulders drop. "I have been speaking when I should have paused," she said. I have been explaining when I should have listened, even to myself. Keanu felt the weight of her words. He realized this moment mirrored his own choice that night. He had chosen listening over speaking, not only for her, but as a way of honoring something he recognized. I learned something similar once, he said. Sandra looked at him. About listening, she asked. About restraint, he replied. About knowing when words are helpful and when they get in the way. This was not a dramatic confession. It was simple, human, shared. Sandra felt less alone in her realization. There was a pause, and then Sandra asked the question that marked the true twist of this part. Did you ever ignore your own quiet, she asked. Keanu considered it honestly. Many times, he said. That admission mattered. It made the lesson mutual, not one-sided. This was not a story of one person guiding another. It was two people meeting at the same truth from different paths. Sandra felt something settle inside her. The notes had stirred something old, but this conversation was shaping something new. I think the reason this feels unsettling, she said, is because it asks me to change something. Not outside, inside. Keanu nodded. Change that does not come with noise can feel uncomfortable, he said, because it does not announce itself. It just waits. Sandra smiled again, this time warmer. You are very good at waiting, she said. Keanu smiled lightly, not proudly. I am learning, he said. They both sat quietly for a while. The heater hummed. The light stayed steady. The notes rested on the table, no longer demanding attention, but still present. The suspense now was subtle. It was about what Sandra would do with this awareness once the night ended. After some time, Sandra reached out and gathered the notes together. She folded them carefully and placed them back on the table, side by side. I do not want to chase the mystery right now, she said. Keanu listened. I want to sit with what they reminded me of, she continued. I think that is more important. Keanu respected that choice. He did not suggest otherwise. Sometimes the kindest response is not action, he said. It is attention. Sandra looked at him with appreciation. That might be the hardest lesson for me, she said. The emotional beat deepened. This was not a solution. It was a turning point. She was beginning to see how much of her life had been shaped by responding instead of listening. She stood again, but this time her movement felt grounded. I think I have been afraid of quiet, she said. Afraid that if I stop speaking, I will disappear. Keanu answered gently. Quiet does not erase you, he said. It reveals you. Those words stayed with her. She did not respond immediately. She let them rest like she had learned to do with silence. Outside, the street remained calm. Nothing dramatic had happened. No answers had been found, and yet something meaningful had shifted. Sandra turned back to Keanu. I do not know what comes next, she said. Keanu replied with calm certainty. You do not have to, he said. Listening is already a step. They shared a quiet understanding. The tension that once felt heavy now felt thoughtful. The story was moving toward something deeper than a reveal. It was moving toward change. But even as the night softened, one truth remained unresolved. Sandra knew that when she returned to her everyday life, the noise would return. Expectations would return. The test would not be here in this calm room. It would be out there. And that realization formed the cliffhanger of the moment. She wondered, silently, whether she would remember this lesson when the world asked her to speak again before she was ready. Morning arrived quietly without urgency, but Sandra felt the difference as soon as she opened her eyes. It was not a dramatic shift. It was a subtle awareness, like waking up with a thought already waiting. The room was filled with soft light, and for a moment she stayed still, listening to her own breathing. She remembered the notes. She remembered the silence. She remembered how it felt to be heard without being interrupted, and she knew today would test that feeling. Later, as the day moved forward, the familiar rhythm returned. Conversations began quickly. Questions came before pauses. People spoke with expectations hidden inside their words. Sandra felt the old reflex rise in her, the need to respond fast, to reassure, to keep everything smooth. She almost followed it without thinking. Almost. Then she stopped. The pause felt uncomfortable, not to anyone else yet, but to her. It felt like standing still in the middle of a moving crowd. She noticed her chest tighten, the familiar urge to explain herself before anyone asked. This was the real conflict, not the notes, not the mystery, this moment, choosing whether to listen inward or perform outward. She remembered Keanu's posture that night. Calm, present, unhurried. She remembered how his silence had not made her disappear, it had made her feel more real. Sandra took a slow breath and said less than she normally would have. She let the silence exist. At first it felt risky, then it felt grounding. Something unexpected happened. The room adjusted. People slowed slightly. Someone else filled the space without tension. The moment did not collapse. The world did not demand more from her. The fear she had carried quietly for years did not come true. That realization landed gently but powerfully. The twist was not external, it was internal. She had believed that constant speaking kept her present, but presence did not come from noise, it came from attention. Later that day, she found herself alone for a brief moment. She sat down and thought about the second note again. Protect her quiet. She understood it differently now. It was not a command. It was not a request from a stranger. It was a reminder. Quiet was not something fragile that others needed to guard. It was something she needed to choose. That evening she met Keanu again. The setting was simple, familiar, calm. There was no urgency between them now, but there was depth. I noticed something today, Sandra said. Keanu listened. I spoke less, she continued, and nothing broke. Keanu smiled softly. Often it does not, he said. Sandra felt a warmth in her chest. Not pride, not relief, something steadier, trust. I realized I have been afraid of disappointing people, she said. Afraid that silence would feel like distance. Keanu nodded. And what did it feel like instead, he asked. Sandra thought for a moment. It felt like honesty, she said. It felt like respect. That was the emotional peak. The story had moved from awareness to action, from understanding to practice, and yet it was not complete. Sandra hesitated, then said something that surprised even her. I think I have been listening to everyone except the person who needed it most, she said. Keanu stayed quiet, letting the truth settle. Myself, she added. The words felt final in a way that mattered, not dramatic, but clear. Keanu spoke gently. Kindness often starts there, he said. Sandra nodded. She felt emotion rise again, but this time it was calm, not overwhelming. She was not fixing her life. She was changing how she met it. She reached into her bag and took out the notes. Both of them. She placed them on the table, then pushed them slightly toward Keanu. I do not need to know who wrote the second one anymore, she said. Keanu looked at her. Why not, he asked. Because the message already reached me, she replied, and chasing the person would only turn it into noise. Keanu respected that answer. It showed growth, restraint, trust. They sat quietly again, not because there was nothing left to say, but because what mattered had already been said. Yet one final tension remained. Sandra knew this lesson would be tested again. Louder rooms, faster conversations, moments where silence would feel risky. This was not a one-time choice, it was a practice. She looked at Keanu. Will you remind me if I forget, she asked. Keanu answered without hesitation. I will listen, he said. That is often reminder enough. Sandra smiled. She felt seen, not watched, supported, not guided. As the evening settled, she understood something that changed the way she saw strength. Strength was not always speaking up. Sometimes it was knowing when to stay quiet and trusting that quiet would hold. But the story was not finished yet. Because the true ending was not about Sandra learning to listen. It was about what that listening would change in others, quietly, without announcement. And that was still to come. The days that followed did not feel lighter in an obvious way. Nothing dramatic changed on the surface. Schedules stayed full, conversations stayed fast, expectations stayed present, but inside Sandra something had shifted into a steadier place. She noticed it in small moments, in the pause before answering a question, in the choice to breathe before responding, in the way her shoulders stayed relaxed even when the room felt busy. She began to listen differently, not only to others but to herself. When she felt tired, she named it quietly instead of pushing through it. When she felt unsure, she let the uncertainty exist without trying to solve it immediately. This did not make her weaker, it made her clearer, and clarity changed how she moved through the world. People around her felt it even if they could not explain it. Conversations felt less rushed. Misunderstandings softened before they grew sharp. Her presence felt calmer, not distant. She realized that listening was not absence. It was attention without control. It allowed others to feel seen without being shaped. One evening after a long day, Sandra found herself alone again in a quiet space. The same kind of light rested on the wall. The same soft hum filled the background. But this time the silence did not carry tension. It carried familiarity. She sat with it easily, like sitting with an old friend. She thought about the notes for the last time, the one she had written to herself long ago, the one written by someone she would never meet. She understood now that both notes had done their work. They had pointed her back to something she had always known but forgotten in the noise. Quiet was not something to defend from the world. It was something to honor within herself. Later, she met Keanu again. There was no need to explain what had changed. He could see it. Not in her words, but in her ease, the way she listened when he spoke, the way she did not rush to respond, the way she let pauses exist without discomfort. "You seem different," he said gently. Sandra smiled. "I feel different," she replied, but not in a loud way. Keanu nodded. "Those changes last longer," he said. They sat together for a while, sharing thoughts without urgency. When one of them spoke, the other listened fully. When silence came, neither of them tried to escape it. It was not a performance. It was mutual respect in its simplest form. After some time, Sandra spoke again. "I used to think being kind meant always saying the right thing," she said. Keanu listened. "Now I think kindness sometimes means not saying anything at all," she continued, "and trusting the other person to arrive at their own truth." Keanu smiled softly. "Listening gives people back their voice," he said, "even when it is quiet." That was the heart of the lesson. Not control, not guidance, not fixing, but presence. As the evening came to a close, Sandra felt a sense of completion. Not because every question had been answered, but because she no longer needed answers to feel steady. The mystery of the second note no longer mattered. The impact had already taken place. In the days that followed, Sandra carried this lesson with her, into conversations that once felt heavy, into moments where she would have rushed to fill space, into situations where listening felt harder than speaking. Each time she chose to listen, something softened. Something human came forward. And she noticed something else. Others began to listen more too, not because she asked them to, but because listening invites listening. Respect creates respect. Kindness moves quietly from one person to another without announcement. This was the true impact of the story. Not a single moment, not a dramatic change, but a ripple. Keanu had chosen listening over speaking that night. Not as a strategy, not as a rule, but as an act of respect. And that choice had created space for Sandra to hear herself again. The lesson stayed simple. Strength does not always speak first. Kindness does not interrupt. Respect listens without taking over. Sometimes the most meaningful support is silence that holds, not silence that leaves. Listening that stays, not listening that waits to reply. Sandra understood now that she did not need to become quieter. She needed to become more honest with when to speak and when to listen, and that balance changed everything. As the story comes to rest, it leaves behind a gentle reminder for anyone listening. You do not have to fill every silence. You do not have to explain every feeling. You do not have to perform strength to be worthy of respect. Sometimes choosing to listen is choosing to love without control. And sometimes that choice is enough to change the way a life unfolds.